40% of kids saying they hate school. We have to find a way in education to bring those kids to school. We got to figure out a way to make them enjoy it, at least just for a little bit.
What we're trying to do is teach kids how to learn.
Some kids have never had success in school. You put them in front of a video game, they find success. Now I have a voice. Now people are listening to me.
I think people think we're teaching video games.
Right.
And that is absolutely not what we're doing.
You can bring this into a building with your teachers, and it's innovative to where the students are going to be a part of something that is just bigger than them.
Through gaming concepts, I really feel like I have even a stronger connection with students than I've had in the past 10 years of teaching.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to our Gaming Concepts podcast. Trevor Gertzen here with my two favorite doctors, Dr. Russell, Dr. Kraft. Good morning, friends. How are you guys today?
Good morning.
Good
Great.
morning. Doing fantastic.
Got my
Okay.
coffee and good.
Okay, best highlight of the week, Dr. Russell.
Okay, yesterday our old school got to go and see a bunch of my old students, and a couple of them said they have listened to the podcast. And I was
No
like,
way.
yes, they're like, we saw it on Facebook, and one of them said, I listen to it at work whenever it comes out. So I was like, I
Oh,
said, did you like and subscribe? You know, of course I had to,
right.
go there
Smash
right
that
away
button.
because that's just me
Shameless
right there.
plug.
It's like, yeah. But they were like, I think I liked it.
Was it like an extra credit assignment?
No, they're not in school anymore. This was the past grads. So shout out to Gabby I told her I'd give her a plug in the later podcast. So
Yeah.
she'll keep listening for a while before we get there. She just listened to episode 1. So
You know, it's really exciting to know we have one listener.
yes. And it's a former student, which is even better.
My mom
So-
listens. My mom
Okay.
listens and gives me
All right.
feedback.
Okay,
so-
we have two.
Oh. Does she only give you feedback about you? Like it's like, Trevor, what are you doing? Or
Typically,
is it everybody?
yes. And I even have aunts. I have some aunts that'll get on and listen too.
Mm.
Oh man, yeah. They used to do that on Facebook when I would do Facebook messages at my middle school when I was a principal. They're like, "Oh, looks like Trevor got a haircut this week. Looks nice, honey."
Yeah.
Oh, thanks,
dear.
thanks, mom. Thanks, mom. So,
Kristen, what was your
Kristen,
highlight of
yeah.
the week?
Oh, I have so many highlights of the week. I would say probably a big one was going to the Kansas Principals Association. And I was there with Trevor for a little bit. I was there with Mike for a little bit. We were actually a vendor and also presented. So I got to present with a couple of great Wichita esports people, Katie and Kyle Schonhofer, and they were just amazing to present with, as always. Just, really shared some great data in Wichita schools here in Kansas. And then I got to introduce, we were a sponsor with KPA, which is great. And I got to introduce Dr. Ruby Payne and have a conversation with her, which is somebody that's been a huge kind of, person I've looked up to in education, really focuses on poverty, and the emotional poverty is what her new book, or 2018, I thought it was new, but the pandemic, I don't remember those years. So that was really fantastic just to talk to her about that. And there were things that she talked about that we're doing with esports and gaming concepts. And so I'll tell you a little fun fact that I learned. Well, there's two. One is that students actually learn better when the screen is, or not the screen, but when it's in front of them versus down. So when they look down to do their math or anything like that, the brain does not quite focus correctly. So it makes sense that they learn a lot, when they're looking at their screen upward instead of even down on their phone or anything like that. So that was really interesting. And then the second thing I learned was that if you look up, you can't keep an emotion. So like she said, look down, think of the happiest time of your life. What was it? Picture it. And then she said, okay, now everybody look up. And it was like, now what are you feeling? And you had to think about, what was I thinking? It's all brain research. And so just talked about how to calm down when you have maybe some anger or emotions. Just literally looking up can get your focus and get you back on track. So a couple of things that really align nicely with what we're doing with esports in schools and gaming concepts. And wasn't that cool? So that was kind of fun.
That's awesome.
Or I'm
Well,
just
I did just
nerdy and nobody cares. So
No, that's brilliant because I just
No,
raised my
no,
desk
it's
up
awesome.
about 3 inches, Kristen. So
So
I'm getting a little more eye level with you guys. But you think about it, like how many times, Kristen, as principals, when kids are in bad places emotionally, they're looking at the floor. Like I'm picturing a student or even a parent or a teacher that's not emotionally regulated and they're staring at the floor versus if we can train people to sit back, look up, breathe in, what a difference that would make. So
huge difference. So
okay. Interesting. All right, well, you guys ready for our guest?
Yes.
I'm really excited about this guest because this guest is actually, when I first got into the esports world, this is one of the first people that I kind of stumbled across because this person was doing a podcast with one of my all-time favorite Husker football players, former NFL Pro Bowler, and now a professional esports athlete and coach, Amon Green. So this person was on Amon Green's Gamers Lounge podcast. This was back in like June.
Wow.
And as I heard this person talk, I'm like, dude, there's something incredible here. Like, this is everything that I am trying to learn and I want to be as an esports person. This person's doing. So that's your first clue. This person's already in one way or another in the esports industry. That's your first clue.
Okay.
Nothing. Okay. This person grew up near Wichita, Kansas, but now lives in Colorado. You're getting closer. Okay.
No clue.
I thought this is an interesting one. She remembered. Oh man, I gave the.
Well, it's a female.
I know the female. This person remembers playing Alley Cat, Tapper, and Techno Bowl as a child. So that might give you a little bit of an age range there.
I don't even know what that is.
Okay. Wow. Kristen, I thought you might know those
Tecmo
games.
Bowl or Super Tecmo Bowl?
It just says Tecmo Bowl, but you could ask the person when they join us here.
Okay.
Despite leaving high school early due to pregnancy, they earned a GED, went on to get an associate's degree in psychology, a bachelor's degree in computer operations, technology, and business quality management, and a master's degree in information technology by 25.
Smart lady.
This is a smart lady. Volunteers with the Girls Who Game program. Hosts a monthly esports research collaborative network and manages the Esports for Education Discord server.
Wow.
And works for Dell Technologies.
Oh, wow. I'm excited.
Any guesses?
No clue.
Nothing. All right. Herbie, I think we're ready. I think we're ready. We have the world renowned, maybe not world renowned, but we're getting close.
I go
Miss
with it.
Danielle Rourke of Dell Technologies, senior high education strategist. Danielle, good morning. Are you there?
I am. Can you all hear me and see me?
Yeah, I'm so excited. Like, I have seen your name. I've like Twitter, LinkedIn stalked a little bit. So this is really exciting.
Absolutely. Well, same goes from me to all of you, especially because of the Wichita connection.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, this is fun. Good job, Trevor. Good job.
Well, I tell you, I'm not even kidding. So when listening to Danielle talk on Amon Green's podcast, I was actually on the way to Table Rock Lake with my wife, and I was still so new to the esports world. But as I'm listening to her, I'm like, this is the stuff. Like, what she's talking about is what we're trying to do and what esports is supposed to be about. So I actually messaged her on LinkedIn. I told my wife, I'm like, I think I found like an esports celebrity, and I'm going to message them on LinkedIn and see if they actually respond. And she responded. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And had the opportunity to meet with her. I'm like, this is the stuff right here. So it's been so good. Danielle, thank you so much for being willing to join us and share your background and wisdom with us. And if you're not already following Danielle, I'd encourage you. And we'll definitely share her socials later. But so much cool stuff you're doing for kids. And maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself, Danielle, and we'll kind of dive into some questions about esports and how you continue to help the school space and kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Like, it is too early in the morning for me to be getting that much praise and recognition. So thank you so much, Trevor. I I appreciate it. I'm flabbergasted. But yes, exactly. So as per the clues, I am actually a senior higher education strategist at Dell Technologies. I've been here for almost 3 years. Prior to that, I was actually an IT director at the University of Colorado Boulder. And prior to that, I worked in a variety of industries, agriculture, telecom, as a bunch of different IT roles. So I've been almost everything you can be in the software development life cycle. But I do live in Colorado now. I'm a little bit north of Denver, and we actually just got a bunch of snow. So this morning was shoveling snow. Important to keep those physical activities in addition to the gaming activities. But yeah, I love being an education strategist because what we really do here at Dell is try to make sure that educators understand some of the different technologies that we have, that our partners have, and understand, okay, this is how it could make learning more efficient. This is how it could make your staff's lives a little bit easier. But then we also go and I get to talk to amazing educational institutions about what they're doing. What are the really cool, fascinating things that they are doing to help students or to innovate in learning processes, and bring that back to Dell and say, these are the things that we need to be supporting. These are special programs we need to help them create. So it's a very symbiotic relationship, and I very much enjoy it. And I do have the privilege of being the subject matter expert on our team for gaming and esports and all things geeky.
Oh, I love this. This is exciting. You have a really cool job.
Oh, thank you. I totally agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
So, but when you say subject matter expert, does that mean you have to stay current in all new and current games and actively be playing so you're relevant to what you're talking about?
Oh yeah, absolutely. 3 hours a day is playing new game. No, I wish that would be really cool. No, it's definitely a labor of love. It's, poring over the PC Gamer magazine on the weekends and setting up Google News alerts for esports and gaming and trying to stay plugged into the research community. So yeah, it's definitely a labor of love, but one that I enjoy.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Well, I would love to know more about the research end of what you do. And one of the things that you had in the bio was the esports research collaborative. I'm curious, kind of tell me more about that, because that's something we see on Twitter a lot of, like the research with, and there's lots of claims that are made, but ultimately want to be able to get back to what's the research say. So can you talk about what that work looks like and how you continue to help move things forward in a data-based way, not just people's feelings about things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess kind of to take you back to the beginning of that, it was, about 2.5 years ago. And we actually had a university in the Netherlands that reached out to us via some of our colleagues over there and said, hey, we know that North America is a little bit farther along in their esports work than Europe is. We'd love to connect with some of the colleges and universities in the States that are trying to do actual, real academic, rigorous research with standards and methodologies and things like that. And so we said, okay, yeah, we know a few people. So we got a call started with a couple of different schools and a couple of researchers. And we realized, okay, we need to have another one. And so then we had that next one where we were talking a little bit more about curriculum and how to get your grad students involved. And we realized, okay, we need to have another one. And then we started talking about how do you get participants, and what we realized after about 3 calls was there's really something here. And there needs to be a community, a support community, where these different coaches, directors, scientists, doctors, they can all reach out to each other and just kind of have a standard place where they can get together and discuss things. So we started the monthly Esports Research Collaborative meeting, and we usually have about anywhere between 100 and 150 people that sign up to attend. Usually there's about 30 to 40 people live on the call each month, but we do record and we send out meeting minutes so that even if your class schedule kept you from maybe being involved that month, you can still get the goodness of the discussions that happened. So we've had really incredible guests too. We typically, we'll do networking and new introductions, and then we also talk about, okay, what's new research? Is anybody starting a new research study, or does anybody need help finding study participants? Or are there conferences that are coming up, calls for papers? Is anybody starting a new journal that they would love to get some new papers published in? So we'll share all of that information, and then we typically have a monthly guest. So it can be a huge gamut of topics and guest speakers. We've had the folks from Tobii Eye Tracking before come in and talk about the research that they're doing with that hardware and their software. We've had Kovac come in and talk about his aim trainer. We've also had a gamer with a visual impairment come in to talk about, like, this is what's important to me as someone who has a visual impairment. I listen to the sounds, I listen to the footsteps, I listen to the cues. And it was just very fascinating, and really kind of helped open the eyes of some of the researchers to a different aspect of gaming and esports that maybe they hadn't thought of. We've had Army West Point esports on there talking about all of the really cool efforts that they're doing to try to be a more inclusive and diverse program and get female cadets involved. They're doing some really cool work and actually connecting with some of the local K-12s, trying to get Girls Who Game going in there. So yeah, we have a lot of really great discussions, a lot of really good synergies, and it helps too, because the academic community can be so small and tight knit. It helps to have all those connections globally, because we have folks from the UK, from Australia, from South Africa, from Canada that come in there, and so it really just helps broaden that network and increase and encourage that academic collaboration.
Yes.
The nerd in me is like nerding out big time. I can't imagine all of the wonderful discussions that happen there. And I'm just curious. First of all, I love that somebody was talking about, the visual impairment, because my son has a visual impairment.
Okay.
And sorry, Alexa's going off here for me. So I think I'm going to turn Alexa off. But he's a gamer, and, he doesn't have any depth perception. Okay. And so I often think about, like, well, so now I'm going to ask him, what do you pay attention to from that visual standpoint? Because that's really interesting. But I was curious, just based on all the talks that you've had and, all the latest research and being connected with so many people, what do you think are some common myths around, esports specifically, that's kind of been proven otherwise through some of the research and things that you've heard?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest that is kind of an obvious one, but if you're new to the gaming and esports world, maybe you still have some of those bias built into your psyche. But it is not a solo sport. Like, even if you're doing the fighting game community, or even the collectible card game aspect of esports, where maybe you are playing one versus one, it is definitely not something where you're sitting in your basement by yourself and you're not being social and you're not having those interactions. We often talk about, the differentiator between just kind of gaming recreationally and esports is really that competitive aspect, and being around other people, being involved, being kind of with your tribe of people that enjoy the same things that you do and that find it fun and exciting and interesting. So I think that's one thing that we see over and over again, not necessarily from hard research, but just from the pure facts of it, is that when people go to see students or athletes engage in esports and practice or play or go to tournaments, they walk away with a whole different viewpoint of it, because they realize, they kind of have that light bulb moment of, oh, this is actually really social. This is actually like very much involving other people, involving logistics and teamwork and working together. So to me, that's one of the most important ones. I think another aspect that we're seeing, and that, again, not a lot of people realize until you get into the space, is the fact that there are very, very important connections between health and wellness and physical activity and esports performance. So one of my favorite studies that was done by some members of our esports research collaborative, Dr. Joanne Donahue from NYIT, Dr. Seth Jenny from Slippery Rock, and a few others as well. But they did a study actually during COVID. So they had to administer it virtually, but they did stick to, very tried and true methodologies and ways of measuring the outcomes and the results. But they had a study where they actually did recruit, esports athletes that are ranked and kind of know what they're doing. They're not necessarily just starting out, but they had them, play for a couple of hours and then try different types of rest. So they had them try, just sitting in the chair and just looking away from their computer. They also had them try doing supine rest, where they got up, they went and they laid down for a few minutes. And then they also had them try, okay, you're going to get up and you're going to walk around for the 6 minutes and then come back. And they had them take cognitive performance tests and then also jump back into the game. And what they found was that both according to the cognitive tests and the game performance, the athletes did much better when they took the walking break and not laying down, etc. So there are definitely studies that are starting to emerge now that more and more people are studying and having this academic research background with esports that show making sure that your body is getting physically what it needs, nutritionally what it needs, like that is actually very important to your performance in game.
That's fascinating. Have you had anybody on there talking about, I know specifically there was some research done as of late that students who are, game at an early age are actually reading quicker. They're learning to read quicker than other students. Has anybody talked on your podcast about that? Or not podcast, what is it? It's like a Zoom, it's a meeting of the mind.
Yeah. It's a monthly meeting. So we haven't had that particular topic on that meeting, but I have seen the research. We actually also have a Discord server that was mentioned. It's an esports for education. So anybody in esports, K-12, high ed, etc. Like we have that space on Discord just to be an open, organic community where people can come in and ask questions and, just have kind of a safe space to learn and to share and to humble brag about their teams. And some of those research articles and studies have been shared in that Discord server as well, just about the fact that, okay, when you actually take the time to look and compare them against their peers, students who are gaming are not necessarily at a disadvantage. There are a lot of skills, teamwork, communication, reading comprehension, like that they are gaining because of playing and because of the way they play. I remember when I was a little kid, there was, what was it? Clash at Demon Head, I think. That's like real deep tracks about video games there, but it was a Nintendo game, and it was one of the ones that had dialogue that ran across, and but you had to read it so fast that I exactly know, what you're talking about there, Kristen. Like, just you have to be able to read fast and to comprehend fast in order to respond quickly in the game.
Yeah. I have another question. I'm sorry, I'm kind of geeking out right now.
I love it.
But okay, so my background is education. Obviously I'm talking to principals and teachers and other people, superintendents throughout the course of my weeks and months. And, I often say esports is the best kept secret in education, because when I go, for example, I was at a Kansas principals conference, and when I would ask the principals who come up to the table, so do you guys have esports at your school, or do you know about esports? The answer is either no, what is that? Or, yeah, I know it's coming, but I don't know how I feel about it. That's really, or like Mike was presenting and there's 600 educators. And when they asked who in here knows what esports is, 3 people raised their hand. So I know you talk a lot about, the industry as well as like at the collegiate level, but I see a real disconnect with public ed and esports. It depends on what state you're in. It kind of depends, but I think there's a mindset that because it's so huge, that it's huge everywhere. And the reality is, it is so not huge in middle schools and high schools, which is why I'm so excited about what we do with, our gaming concepts. So what would you say as far as you're on this educators Discord. What do you do to talk to people to change that mindset of making sure that this is more normalized in school? What are the conversations that are being had, and what is the research maybe that's being used to help people understand it better?
I'm saying, like, what's going to turn the tide? Like, what is it that's finally going to make people go, okay, we can quit being so grouchy about this. There's really good things. Because clearly there's research to show, and we all know this.
Yeah.
What's it going to take?
So those are very big questions, and I want to try to address them all, but feel free to redirect me if I just go off base. No, you're great. I know I could ramble about this for a long time. So
ramble.
So I would say, like, one of the first things to address your portion of the question, Kristen, was we have this wonderful opportunity by being education strategists with Dell. We talk with colleges and universities and K-12 school districts every single day. Like, all of us team of education strategists, that is our job. And yes, we talk about many more topics. We talk about digital literacy. We talk about citizenship. We talk about, all of the different aspects with education and technology. But we have 100% seen an uptick in the past 2 to 3 years of conversations where the schools are coming to us saying, like, okay, tell us about this esports thing and what is it and why should we get involved? And, here's some of the pushback that we've gotten from parents or from other teachers, et cetera. And so we do have these wonderfully golden opportunities to talk with customers and to share with them, like, this is what we did in Missouri. This is what we did in Texas. This is what this particular school district did and some of the results that they found. So that we feel, our team at Dell feels very privileged to be able to have those conversations. And when we do have those conversations, we are very much approaching it from the educational standpoint, and that here are the benefits to the students and to the institution. So when I say that, like, we bring up, we actually have decks, PowerPoint decks made out so that we can really display this and have these conversations quite often. But we talk about both the global competencies that students are gaining, the things that they can take with them in life, that they can, help in their personal areas as well as their professional areas, like teamwork and those communication skills and being able to have that critical thinking when something goes wrong. How do you adapt and how do you figure out how to deal with it or come up with an alternative solution? It's something that I talk with a lot. Especially if there are students in the audience. I'm like, so has anybody ever been to one of these events or set one up? And a few hands will go up. And I'm like, and how many of them went 100% perfect all of the time, exactly to plan? And everybody laughs because they all know that these events, when you're dealing with hardware and you're dealing with people and you're dealing with logistics and you're dealing with electricity and internet connectivity, there's always going to be something that comes up. And that's something that the students that are involved in esports programs just learn inherently without having to be shown in a textbook, without having to, have a teacher pound it into their head or give them a pop quiz on it later. They're learning, that computer, the fan died, so we need to open it up and we need to reseat the fan. Or, this internet connection is far too slow. What are the options that we can do to increase that speed and make sure everybody can still play here in this area? So, the global competency piece is important. We also talk about the professional competency piece where, they are learning those skills that they can take with them into jobs, into interviews. They're learning possibly, how to be interviewed by local media if they show up. They're learning how to reach out to businesses and request sponsorship or request prizes for their event. They're learning how to plan an event. They're learning how to become project managers without even going through a project management class. So, those are some of the things that we speak with administrators about, that we speak with parents about, that say, like, look, this is more than just getting together with your friends and playing Smash Brothers. Yes, it is that, and that is fun.
That's
and
fine.
Awesome.
That's good, but
but it is actually teaching them these real world skills. It's teaching them how to be a global citizen when they're in Wichita, Kansas, and they have to schedule a match with somebody in the UK for a time when they're all still awake. So they're learning those different concepts of just really how to interact in the world in a much broader sense. So, excuse me. So that's kind of one of the areas we really emphasize, that we emphasize also the career pathways. One of my favorite things to do, I give homework because, like, you can take the educator out of the system, but you can't take the education out of them. So I always give people homework, and I'm like, go to LinkedIn, go to Dice, go to Monster, go to Hot Jobs, wherever it is that you typically look for jobs, and just type in esports and see what comes up. And you're going to see dozens, if not hundreds, of things pop up. And they are not, some of them are for smaller companies, but many of them are for Twitch, for Red Bull, for the game publishers, these large recognizable companies. And oftentimes, many of them will actually post salaries that are, very close to or above that 6-figure mark. And that's what I encourage students. Actually, I talk a lot with students about doing that. I say, like, if you want to get into gaming and esports, as whether you want to be a professional gamer, which we kind of try to discourage them from, or you just want to work in the industry as an HR person, a payroll person, etc., like, go and take this data, go and take these actual examples back to your parents, back to your teachers, and show them there are legitimate careers with good paying salaries for recognizable named companies, that you can actually do this. And also taking those, I talk about hitmarker.net a lot, which you guys are probably familiar with. And so I encourage students and administrators, teachers to go out there, look up all of those jobs, look at the different areas of the world that they're in. They're global. Look at the competencies, look at the requirements of the job posting. And then, if you're a student, use those requirements in that job posting, if you think that sounds really interesting, and start to select classes or electives or, different areas that go and align to those job postings, because you're preparing yourself to possibly go into that career. At the very least, you're seeing if you really like it or not, or if you want to do something else. So, a lot of those things, it's kind of like a show me the money and show me the opportunity, but there are so many good, legitimate ways. And then like LF Group, and looking out there for the scholarship board and showing, like, hey, there are over 200 schools in the United States that are offering scholarships for esports for their collegiate teams. And look at these proficiencies that I'm learning, and look at these job postings that I can go into. That's really how we kind of encourage them to speak about it and to take it to the naysayers and be like, yes, there's so much talk about, games encourage violence, games don't encourage violence, games are addictive, games aren't addictive. There's all of that. But if you really look at it from the opportunity standpoint and the learning standpoint, that's where we want to focus and really encourage both schools, parents, students to look at it from. I think I'm missing pieces of the question, so help me remember.
But it's okay. It's okay. You totally
No, you're right on.
You spoke my esports love language, so I loved everything you said. So
that's wonderful. I love it.
Well, Danielle, it's nice to see you again.
It is nice to see you again,
chatted.
Michael.
Yes. So I loved hearing your story. That was awesome about, and I remember you had told us you grew up in Kansas and everything around Wichita. So that was cool to hear again. I just kind of want to circle. I think you made a great point about talking to the students about the careers and everything that are out there. I think also it's important to talk to the administrators and teachers and everybody about that same opportunity. I often just pull up some of the publisher websites just to see what jobs are available. And it's like, I think people talk about esports, and I think we do an excellent job of sharing, the careers within esports, but they don't often think about, like, oh, they need vice presidents of operations, and they need HR managers, and they need lawyers, and they need all these things that a traditional company would need, but they just need to have that esports focus. So I think that's something that as a challenge for us, I think communicating as an industry, outside of our industry, I think is really important. And I'm just kind of circling back on all the stuff that just kind of got talked about. So sorry. I just wanted to kind of catch up here, but I think that's one thing but you spoke about live events, and that is so important. I think that's where you see all the light bulbs go off with everybody who goes. I mean, even Christy, when, she was kind of like, what is esports? And, I'm supporting you, but this is kind of your thing, and you go do this thing. But we actually went out to BlizzCon, and you probably heard this story, but we went to BlizzCon, and immediately she was like, I totally understand what's happening right now, and I think I think as an industry, being in the esports industry and talking externally, bringing people to those events so they get those light bulb moments are so important, because it's just something that we lack, and it's something we really within our company and with partners, we're really trying to find ways where we can either have micro events or just get more people to these events that aren't in the esports industry, because we go to the esports industry stuff and then we talk to each other about the same thing. We're not really outreaching to people who don't know. We're not building the system out, right? So I don't know, that's just one thing I was thinking about. But then you were talking about the gaming and the hearing, the different setups, and I will say I'm the gamer in our little three person group here. So and
what's the first game you remember playing, Michael?
First game I remember playing was definitely well, I played Pong. I did play Pong.
Yep. Super Breakout.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were that old, Mike.
And then,
I played Pong.
No, I'm an OG. I was Atari 2600, so that was me.
Yep.
I was all about that. So Pac-Man, Asteroids. I was a big
Galaga
player. Yeah. Played a lot of, so kind of like you were talking about with the reading, like, so I played Dragon Warrior and all these Koei games that were from Japan where you had to read because it was all translated from Japanese to English. And so I read all these, I played all these historical Chinese and Japanese games so I know weird stuff about China and how it all formed and everything, just random stuff that people don't know because of those games. And I tell that story all the time. It's like, I'm a history teacher by trade, but I know way more from history from those games and playing Civilization and those kinds of things than I ever learned in a classroom. Just, but that's the way I learn. And I understand we need to, we have to have different learning styles. But yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of one of the, Christy and I were just talking about this the other day, kind of one of the cool things about our generation where we started young and we started with the first gaming consoles. So we've evolved with them. So I think our brain kind of evolved, we're now, if I jumped into Call of Duty, had I not had all those prior experiences, like the way Call of Duty is now, I don't think I'd be very good at it. But I think because I evolved with it and I was able to, I learned on a joystick and a button, and then I went to 2 buttons and a square, and then I went to this thing, and then I went to that thing and that thing and that thing, and then a mouse and a keyboard. I think I'm able to adapt much quicker because I went through that evolution of all the games. So for me, I think that helps me as an older person. I'm 46, but that's old in the gaming world. Well, not much older than average, but I do bring the average up. So
let's not talk about age on this call right now. Okay. Older than all of you.
Sorry about that.
We as a team, Mike got us playing in the last couple weeks as a team to play World of Warcraft together. And for most of us, I'd never played it before, like never ever played it before. And so just the learning and getting the tips from Mike and Herbie and the other people on our team has been a blast. But I had an experience about a week and a half ago where I played, and I ended up playing for like 2.5, 3 hours. I had no idea. But I was talking to these, like my teammates the entire time, and I get done, I'm like, that was absolutely a blast. Like I did not expect it to be that much fun, but I could easily see how you could, if I were to go home or like go and talk to my wife and say, hey, I just spent 3 hours playing a video game. Oh, what are you doing? No, I spent 3 hours talking to my friends. Oh, okay, cool. Like it's almost all about the messaging piece of what was taking place. I was having great conversations with a couple of my colleagues and ended up playing with my former PTO president's husband, who's in San Diego. Like he found me in World of Warcraft. I don't know how you find somebody, but he found me. He shows up on my screen. He's like, hey, dude, don't do that. Like, and so he guided me through the quests, and I'm like, do you really have to read all the information? He goes, yes, you need to read the information. It's like, can I just run around and cut stuff up? Because you can, but it's not going to be a lot of fun. And it was such a neat
like
experience.
A true middle school principal.
Yeah, you got to read all the text.
Can we just go?
Read this?
Yeah, but you talk about the experience piece being important. That's what it was for me, even. And this is what I do for a living now. But to actually do it, I'm like, oh, like 100%. This is where those connections can be built for kids. But again, until you do it, you don't see it. All you see is somebody looking at a screen.
So Danielle, sorry, go ahead. I was going to ask you a question.
No, I was just going to add a quick little anecdote to that. So, we actually, one of the places I worked for previously, they actually did have a consulting firm come in, and the idea was to help build up the upper leadership team and to help give that sense of teamwork and camaraderie, and helping to understand how the different leaders in the executive kind of cabinet, how they operated and how they thought. And they actually like split them up and into World of Warcraft parties and had them play World of Warcraft. And it was fascinating because I spoke with quite a few of them that were participating in it. Some of them were gamers, some of them weren't gamers, but they all said that they took away some really important lessons about how did they lead and how did they manage their teams. And when there was, a quest in front of them, how did they approach it? Did they start telling everybody what to do? Did they just go off and do it by themselves? Or did they, bring the team together? And it was quite the fascinating leadership exercise for many of these very seasoned professionals in academia to really stop and be able to reflect, by having that kind of, I don't necessarily want to say out of body experience, but by putting themselves into these characters in this game world and trying to work towards these fictional quests, they were able to reflect on that and say, oh, I see now why my team really didn't like my approach to that other thing we had to do here for work. So totally agree.
When this World of Warcraft experiment started among our group, and I was actually shocked at the response because I just threw it out because for me, gaming is a social. I mean, I'm decent, but I was never going to be a pro player or anything, but it was a social thing where I thought it'd be fun for us to do some team building, kind of like what you were alluding to with the groups you just mentioned. But one of the questions was, why did I choose World of Warcraft? And I said, well, really, it's got, the tutorial is great. It's got the lowest barrier to entry. It's a social game. It's a big game. I said, if I had had Trevor start in like Call of Duty, it would be no fun because he would be eliminated the entire game for mini games until he figured it out. This will get him at least used to using a mouse and a keyboard and communicating and reading the quests and figuring out the directions and reading the mini map and all those things that are critical to being successful in some of those faster paced games, So, and I think that's kind of where my learning came in. And so I don't know. It was just a great experiment, I think. And I'm appreciative of them trying it because for me, it was more of just a social hanging out with people and our work group after, kind of instead of going out to a place where they serve beverages after work, we're going to do this. Right. So I appreciate it. Even Christy is playing. So,
That's awesome.
Which for her is, she's not a gamer and she says it, fully admits that, but she's been very supportive of it. And I'm excited that we're all doing that. So I think it'd be great for team building. So.
Kristen, I know you have a couple like more serious questions, but back to the World of Warcraft thing. I even halfway through, one of the guys was playing was like, hey, how are you like controlling the game? I'm like, I'm using the keyboard and the mouse. He goes, no, like walk me through what you're doing. And I totally had that moment that I could see a kid having of like the importance of somebody coaching them saying, no, here's a better way to do it. Or have you tried it this way? And then he was even like, okay, now it's your turn to go do a power rush slay the nymph move. And I'm like, no, you do it. He goes, no, it's your turn. You need to do it. And he was like having me it was just like a good coach would do, where they would demonstrate it and then they would have me do it. But it was such a different environment. This was 2 weeks ago, and I still have those good feelings when I actually was able to do it correctly. He's like, good job, Trevor. And he's somewhere in California. So just a cool thing. And like you said, when you live it yourself, it's totally different experience. So sorry, Kristen, I know you had some more serious questions. So.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask a couple. I was curious on your monthly meetings, what is some of the, and maybe you could reduce this down to one question, but what is some of the newer research that you've had that you think this is really interesting that maybe we haven't heard about yet, or maybe who is like somebody that's come on recently that you said you had guests that you're like, ooh, this is something to pay attention to. So you can one or both of those, but just something new.
Yeah, I can think of a couple of different things that are interesting. And hopefully they're interesting to everybody and not just those of us that are like super esports geeks. But one of the things I would say from the research standpoint, so we have, there is a lot more research that's being done around organization, and how the different esports organizations run, how esports is being administered or brought up in schools and in colleges and in the K-12 setting. So there's a lot of interesting research around both like the HR organizational side, as well as the just, how do you run a program, or what types of areas are coming up in academia. There is a study out there, again, Dr. Seth Jenny and Dr. Joey Gryziak and Dr. Nico Bassoms, that they've done about kind of taking an inventory of the different academic programs. And I do that their particular study focused on high ed as opposed to K-12, but what are the locations throughout the world that have courses or certificate programs or minors or majors related to esports? And then kind of getting a little bit more granular, what are the discipline areas that are focusing on that? So you have some schools that have these incredible business management programs that are leaning into that and doing esports business management and helping students understand, like, okay, what is it like to manage esports talent versus managing traditional sports talent? And what is it like to go out and get those sponsorships for Twitch streams versus trying to get them for, XYZ traditional event. So really trying to bring in those esports specifics to wherever their particular niche is. You see a lot of schools also from the medical aspect, osteopathic medicine, and just, bones and joints and stress injuries, as well as psychology. So to me, it's fascinating to learn, like, okay, who are the schools that are really picking up on it and are really leaning in to creating new programs that not only provide these new avenues for their students, but also potentially provide new ways to attract students for the institution. Offering an esports business management program, and you're the only one in the state that does that, that's a way to attract some students that perhaps had never looked at your school before. So to me, that's very fascinating. Kind of tangential to that, I've actually spoken quite a bit this year. It's like this year, all of a sudden, I started talking to everybody who is doing this, but there's quite the interest in esports from the hospitality and management departments within colleges and universities because of the event aspect, because of the live show aspect. I know traditionally, like, at least me and hospitality and management programs around the country, please forgive me for thinking this, but, I always just kind of knee-jerk thought, oh, okay, if you want to be a hotel manager, if you want to be a restaurant manager, that's what you go into hospitality management degrees or departments for. But they are really taking a look at it and saying, like, the future of live events isn't necessarily always just going to be concerts or traditional sports event. Esports events are huge, and we are seeing more and more of them across the country. And kind of going back to that, there's always something that's challenging when you host an event like that. If you can actually train the students, these are the ways that you can manage and mitigate when unexpected things happen. It's fascinating. And we actually do have, there are some researchers from Purdue that are a part of our call that are trying to take a look at that specifically from the hospitality management aspect of, what makes you want to go to a live event? What makes you more willing to be there? What makes it less interesting or less compelling to be at a live event? And then also I love the fact that they're looking at the diversity, equity, and inclusion aspect of it as well. Like, what are some diversity issues that you've seen at live events you've attended recently? So I think those are all really fascinating points. Just to add, Christy, like to what you were saying, as far as something that I think is interesting, we've actually had an esports lawyer, Dr. Ellen Zavian, not doctor, but Ellen Zavian. She is a lawyer. She is also a professor at George Washington University. She has come on and spoken with our group and has actually attended quite a few of them as well, and has started to kind of bring some of her contacts in and share. But esports law is something that I think is very fascinating because
Fascinating, I'm sure.
yeah, it's, you have many of the same things as like traditional sports law with like name, image, and likeness and some of those other considerations. But then you also have the aspect of, in basketball, like there is not a publishing company that owns the basketball, but in esports, there's a publishing company that owns that game, and you have to follow their rules and their regulations. So it adds another layer of complexity to the law aspect of it. So I find it fascinating. I have a couple of acquaintances, at least, that are esports lawyers, and I love picking their brain because it's just so different.
Oh my gosh, I love this too. And one other thing, and I don't know if you guys have any other questions, but I'm going to shift it a little bit to a more personal question. But when Trevor introduced you, you had kind of a really cool story about just getting your GED from high school, and then you've gone on to do really great things in the job that you're in now, as well as education. So I think sometimes stories are the best way to kind of inspire people. So would you be willing to share a little bit more about your story and just how you came to be where you are today? Because I think a lot of people would love to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can even kind of bookend it with gaming. So maybe I'll get bonus points for that. But so kind of what I was talking about. I was a gamer since I was a little girl, playing on the Ataris, the 386s, Sega Genesis, things like that. And I loved it so much. And it was something I was so passionate about that I had decided, like, oh, my dream job is going to be a cinematics artist for Blizzard. Like, that's what I want to do as my dream job. And so, I started to actually work towards that. I kept playing video games, but then I also started studying like the art from video games and took art classes in high school. And I actually went so far as I reached out to the Art Institute of Phoenix and started their kind of like pre-enrollment process and sent them my portfolio of artwork that I had done in my high school classes and et cetera. And I actually got like pre-enrolled, preliminarily accepted, that once I graduated high school and had sufficient enough grades and things like that, I could go. And so I was really excited about that because it was, a step closer to my dream of what I wanted to do when I was a kid. But as we all know, life happens and things happen, and I met a boy and, ended up getting pregnant with.
It's always a boy.
It is always a boy.
It is always the boys. Yes.
Like a country song.
Darn like chromosome.
Hey, I'm from Kansas. I can bring a country song element.
I love
into
it.
my life.
I love it.
But yeah, met a boy, fell in love, had my son, but actually ended up getting divorced later because as is common, those 17, 18-year-old relationships don't always last. And sometimes you get into them for the wrong, Michael, you know what I'm talking about. Get into them for the wrong reasons. But, had my son out of it, absolutely love it. My son is 19 now, off doing his own life and being amazing, and would not trade him for anything in the world. But definitely the choices that I made in high school kind of, put me on a slightly more difficult path than perhaps making some other choices. So I came from a not super well-off household. Like, my mom was a single mom who worked cleaning jobs and drove a bus. And, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to just go to school and rest on my laurels and have her pay for everything for me and this new, child that I brought into the world. So I also, it was the summer in between actually my sophomore and my junior year in high school, when I got pregnant and started weighing my options and realized that, okay, I was going to have to work full time to support this baby. And if I was going to work full time, that was going to be 8 hours a day. If I wanted to try to finish high school, that was going to also be 8 hours a day. And when was I going to see the baby? And when was I going to sleep and things like that? So, so I made the decision to go ahead and, submitted my, okay, I'm dropping out of high school note. And that was honestly one of the hardest things I ever did in my entire life, because I was actually on the path to be valedictorian and things like that. So I loved school, absolutely loved school, but just kind of again, realized with the choices that I had made that I needed to take a different path. So immediately went and got signed up to take my GED. Once I got my GED, then went to, actually, you guys probably know Cowley County Community College.
Yeah, Arc City.
So Yep. So I'm a Tiger. And enrolled there and was able to take classes while I was pregnant, opposite of my work schedule. And then once I had was able to work around. So, thank goodness for institutions like that do have flexible schedules and online class options. And definitely wouldn't be where I was today without those options. So got my associate's degree from Cowley, and then actually enrolled in Southwestern College and their professional studies program, so that I could, go up there to their campus in Wichita at night and do some weekend classes and things like that. And then eventually enrolled in Capella University, which is based in Minnesota. But they were one of the early colleges to offer online degrees. And was definitely motivated by the fact it sounds really cheesy, so please don't laugh, but I did not want my son to see me as someone who wasn't able to finish something. And so that's why that's why I wanted to get my master's degree. I was like, okay, if I get a master's degree, nobody can tease him. He can't feel like his mom didn't finish something. So that was really my motivator, and, being able to provide a good life and provide for him the opportunities that I wanted him to have. So that's what got me into tech. And I kind of set aside my dreams of being in gaming. I was like, okay, yeah, that time has passed. That was a cool dream. I can still play games as a hobby. It's good. And honestly, my son's as big of a gamer as I am. So there are oftentimes that we'll just sit together and play games. He actually just bought me Cult of the Lamb recently on Steam, which is a really fun but little dark game. But
I saw that advertised and I was like, I don't know if that's for me. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But we also have been playing Gotham Knights together. So, cool. But kind of set aside my gaming dream ambitions and did everything else in my life, worked in IT, worked in academia and higher ed, got this job at Dell. Well, saw this job at Dell, got recommended to apply for it, and went down to Texas to do the interview. And in one of our Dell headquarter buildings down there, they have this experience lounge where you can go and touch things and see new equipment and kind of play around with it. And they had a whole corner devoted to Alienware and had the RGB lighting, had the curved screens, the gaming chairs. And I got really excited. And I told one of my colleagues, oh, can you take a picture of me in front of all this? Because I want to make my son jealous, which it did. He's like, God, Mom, that's a cool setup. But in doing that, it made the hiring manager that was there with us go, well, do you like video games? Is that a thing? And I actually tell this story to students quite a bit because I'm like, my brain got excited and I was like, oh, I could talk about it. And I was like, okay, talk about it tactfully and respectfully and in a professional setting. And so I say that I, tactfully and respectfully let my geek flag fly for a few minutes and talked about how excited I was. And he goes, okay, cool. I think I have a side gig for you. And so that's how I got involved in being the subject matter expert for gaming and esports and education and talking with people globally about it and all of the efforts that we do. And it's wonderful. And it's something that I actually tell students because I had set aside that part of my life and that part of my passion because I just didn't think I was going to have roads into it. Right. And the job description here at Dell for a senior higher education strategist absolutely said nothing about gaming or esports. It wasn't in the job description at all. And it wasn't until I was in the scenario, in the environment, and chose, like I said, to tactfully and respectfully let my geek flag fly and have that passion come out that I was able to opportunity with it. So I tell students, I'm like, never give up. Absolutely never give up. Even if you start off as a bakery person, there could be a road that leads you back to your passions.
Oh, what a great, that's so good. I'm here
Danielle,
for
I
it.
think we might be twins.
That's
We
amazing.
have the
That's
a
Mike's
very
origin
similar
story right
when
there.
it comes to esports and how we
Yeah?
got back to it. Oh yeah,
That's amazing. Yeah, we need to
yeah,
have some coffee or something.
yes, same story. I wasn't tactful and respectful about it. I was shy and scared to mention it, but it worked out. So
Yeah.
when Christy hired me, I was like terrified. She's like, what's your hobby?" And I was like, "Oh boy, I don't know how this is going to go. I'm going to say gaming," and worked out pretty well. So we're
And
doing
she'll burn
fine.
your geek flag, but
That's right. I did. I earned it that day. So I just have one more question about so you asked about my favorite game. What was it about Blizzard that drew you? Like, did you play like Orcs and Humans? Where did you start in the Blizzard lineage of playing? I played the original Orcs and Humans. That's where I started. That's where I kind of got into Blizzard, and I've played every Blizzard game. So
Mine was Diablo.
okay.
Like Diablo is my game. Diablo is my series. Was just absolutely loved it. Honestly, like started playing it with my older brother. So, I think a lot of us, kind of get into it because our older sibling or, somebody that we know plays. And so then we're like, oh, I can beat them. I can do this better than them. And so, yeah, Diablo definitely was my favorite. Played a little bit of StarCraft, and then did World of Warcraft for a hot minute until I realized, oh, this is a dangerous path for me to go down. I could spend way too much time in this. So, kind of backed off that a little bit consciously. But yeah, honestly, what captivated me most about the Blizzard offerings were the cinematics and the amount of effort and time and art and, the fact that a computer could generate images that were that beautiful and that were, just breathtaking and could capture your imagination. That was kind of what made me go like, oh, I want to do that.
Yeah, their cinematics are incredible, and yeah, I've played a little Diablo 4. Just letting you know, it's pretty legit. It's gonna be fun.
Nice.
So when it's done, it's gonna be nice. So got to
I
play at
love it.
BlizzCon before COVID. They already had a lot of it playable. So I mean, I'm excited.
Nice.
I'm excited about it too. I love all the different titles, so I'm excited for it. So all right,
awesome.
yeah,
Go ahead.
We'll catch you up, Trevor. It's fine.
okay, I was saying
it'll be great. So
Trevor's like all excited. Did you have another question?
No,
I'm
no, I
good.
just say you're all over my head on that one. But
I know.
I'm learning how to. Did you know
Me
that if you
too.
push the right and left mouse button at the same time, it makes you go forward in World of Warcraft? Did you guys know that?
Hey,
I
also,
did
I have
not
other
know
tips.
that.
If you want other tips,
Also, if you push
I
down the
can
number
help
key,
you out.
it'll run in the same direction. You don't have to push any buttons. If you just push number key, you auto run. Just
Are
so
you
you know.
serious?
Number lock. Yeah, true.
Trevor's gonna try it right now.
Let's say,
He's
Mike,
all
I'm
in.
done for the day.
Trevor, you have to work today.
I'm
Trevor,
done for the
You cannot
day.
be
I'm
playing World of
out.
Warcraft right now.
I'll put on my calendar professional development.
Okay,
We'll call
there
it
you
good.
go.
So,
All right.
Well,
Kristen, you
Danielle,
have
we
your fun
always
thing for us?
we always wind up with a really fun question that we all answer. And so I have like this whole list of just super fun questions. They're just kind of to end it and bring it all back together. But so I am going to ask the question. Everybody has to answer it. And usually we have talked about, music before in the past. And this was, I thought, a pretty fun one. So we'll see what everybody says. But what would you say? I love music. I don't know if you're a music person, but
Definitely.
what would you say is the worst song ever?
Oh, goodness. And does it start with me or is everybody else going to go first?
If you want to start, you can. If somebody has one, Trevor's like already got one going.
So it's not. I don't mind it, but I see why my wife hates it. It's "Kissed by a Rose" by
Seal?
by Seal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. My
Well, if
wife
you
like
sing it like
literally
that, she
will
probably
walk out.
would not like it.
I do turn the
That might
channel
be the
on that.
problem.
Yeah.
I think maybe I serenaded her with it once, so that was it.
Oh, dear.
Okay, there's mine.
That's a good one.
That's amazing.
I will go. I am a huge Christmas music fan, and we're in the season right now. So, but there is one Christmas song that comes on, and I will change it every single time. And it's "Last Christmas" by Wham. I could not do it.
I love that
Could
song.
not do it. It's on. It's like on repeat. Like I have 3 different Christmas music channels, and it'll be on all 3 channels at the same time. I'm like, can they stop
Love it.
playing this song? Like, play me a classic.
It's a good one, Mike.
I don't
That's
want
why
this
they don't
one.
stop.
That one is so nostalgic for me as
I
a
know.
middle school kid watching, MTV.
It's not that it's a
VH1.
bad song. It's just that it's constantly
It's
on.
constant. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, anyway.
Because it's a good
Okay.
song. That's why it's constantly on.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's
It's
not
like,
no
you see
very.
the connection
It's
there?
not like they did
Truth.
underneath the mistletoe and like this person sang it and this person sang it. It's only Wham. They're the only ones who sing it, and it's just like constant.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
All right.
Too much.
All right.
It's okay.
Danielle, you got one?
Woof. Yeah. So I think I'm gonna go with, and I don't know that it's like the worst song in the world. I want to be careful, like, about how I say this. It is just, if we're talking about songs, you always change the channel to. Yeah. There was that song back in the 90s, like I think it was by Beck, I think, but the I'm a Loser Baby.
Mm,
Oh,
it
so
is
why
Beck.
don't you
That is
kill
Beck.
me?
Yeah.
Trevor's
So
not
many
a
great
fan.
Beck songs.
Not a
Oh.
fan of that song.
Yeah. You know what's funny, Danielle, is I always I hate that song too. Like I would turn it, but then I saw Beck in concert. He opened for U2 and I was riveted. Like I just thought
Interesting.
I might be a new fan. Sometimes that happens when you see him live and you're like,
Mhm.
wow. But he was outstanding live. I mean, both my husband and I looked at each other like I was not expecting to like him, and it was really good. So
okay, that's good to know. I actually, really quick, a connection for both you and Michael, like seeing bands live and being overwhelmed by their performances, and then also the Christmas music aspect. Actually, tomorrow, this kind of like a family tradition in our household is that to kick off the holiday season, we go see Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Oh,
live.
so good. Oh,
That is awesome.
So good.
So we get to go see it tomorrow, and I know that they always come back and stop at the Interest there in Wichita too, usually.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, actually, that was yesterday, Danielle.
Was it? Okay.
Christy and her husband Brian went last night for his birthday.
Perfect.
So they're heading down I-70 then.
Yep, they're
so
going that way. Yep.
on the way to Denver.
I love it. Well, I would say songs that I always turn. I'm going to blanket this into a band that I just can't. And and my husband plays it just to tick me off from time to time.
Good
but
band.
Really, it's I Want a New Drug, Huey Lewis and the News. And frankly, anything by Huey Lewis and the News, I cannot do. I think it's because I was an 80s glam rock girl that loved all the bad boys and so Huey Lewis was like, ugh. Like
I don't think I know enough Huey Lewis to not like him.
Huey Lewis and the News. Yeah. And I know every word. That's the really sick part is I know all the songs because they're like little jingles in my head. But yeah, I cannot do it. So there you have it. Well, we're going to go ahead. That was fun. I knew that'd be a fun one. We're going to go ahead and wind this up. Danielle, how could our listeners get in touch with you via social media?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm out there on LinkedIn. So you should be able to look up like Danielle Rourke Dell on LinkedIn. I post way too often about esports and gaming. I love all of the gaming concepts content though. So I will usually try to repost some of that too. So thank you all for creating it. And then I'm also on Twitter. I'm at HiEd Danielle, but it's HIED Danielle. So again, also post way too much stuff about gaming and esports out there, and definitely do some Alienware fangirling on that account. But would love to, just connect with people and start working with them if anybody is interested in attending our esports research collaborative. Or we also have a K-12 networking group for esports specifically that meets monthly that my colleague Dr. Jeremiah Ogle-Frank runs, and that also has guest speakers, and it's just kind of a place for K-12 coaches, directors, administrators, superintendents to come and talk and share ideas and ask questions. So if anybody wants to join either of those two groups or our Discord server, feel free to just give me a message.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, as always, you can find me at Kristen Esports on Twitter and LinkedIn. Trevor?
Gertzen_edu on Twitter, and you just search Trevor Gertzen on the LinkedIns.
And I'm Michael Russell on LinkedIn and at Russ the Teach on Twitter.
Awesome. Thanks, Danielle. We appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. This was such a great learning experience for all of us. And I know our listeners are going to really enjoy everything that you had to share. So with that, just thank you to our listeners, and we will see you again next week. And until then, just keep on gaming.
Awesome. Thanks, Danielle.
Thanks, Danielle.